All right, it looks like I'm live. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to episode number 3 of A Little Bit of Everything. And anyway, yeah, I am live. Just had to double check my YouTube channel. Sorry about the hiccup. But yeah, it's another wonderful day here. Um, Woke up with a little bit of a headache, so I might talk a little slower than usual, but all is very well. I'm here and functional. Unlike the Solana blockchain, which is down again for more times than I've bothered to count because I don't use that blockchain. But yeah, starting a little later than usual this morning. And I don't have to worry about the sun bleeding through the window, even though I forgot to hang up my sunshade. That's because it's cloudy and it's supposed to rain here all week. So I don't get to go play in the dirt today after the stream, but I did yesterday. And while I was doing that, um, I had a lot come to me in regard to something I talked about yesterday called the Successful Society. And one of the things that has come to me is that every government that has ever existed in the history of the world has been an experiment. And the purpose of conducting an experiment is to arrive at a conclusion. And what I see as those who are the inhabitants or the citizens of the successful society is primarily those who have arrived at this conclusion surrounding the experiment of government. And I remember having an interview last year with someone named SJ. She goes by the name A Wild SJ on Twitter. She has a live stream, and we were talking about basically creating a country. She's really big into something called Hexaco. So I remember talking with her about some of these things. And, it says in the Declaration of Independence that when the governments fail at meeting these ends, and these ends being securing rights for the citizens, that is not only the right, but it's the responsibility of people to institute a new government. And we're starting to see some of the push in that direction these days, particularly in regard to the state of Texas wanting to secede from the Union. They call it Texit. And I've had the opportunity of meeting the executive director of the Texas Nationalist Movement on 2 occasions now. And needless to say, I'm a big supporter of Texas independence because I believe, based on my study of history and the Constitution, that it was the intent for the founders for the states to eventually come to a place where they can live independently of the central government. If you look back in history, after the American colonies won their independence from England, they were, you know, they were in a state of vulnerability because the fact of the matter is, um, England and France, in particularly, other European nations also were really big on colonization at that time. In other words, they were wanting to bring the rest of the world into their subjection. And um, Alexander Hamilton, in particular, addressed these things in the Federalist Papers, which I have a copy of. It's packed away at the moment, but something I've read. And in the Federalist Papers, those are basically the 18th century equivalent of social media postings of the people who wanted a constitution, who wanted to have a central government. They're making their point in there that if we don't organize around a central government, then the states are going to be vulnerable to these colonizing powers wanting to come back and take by force the resources that this continent now had to offer. You know, these colonizing powers, they wanted timber for building ships, for example. And if we don't organize and create a central government that can serve as a diplomatic bridge with these colonizing powers to make peaceful agreements, to have a market for these people to buy our resources, well, then we're basically going to be fighting wars forever. So that was the selling point behind the Constitution. Because the fact of the matter is, when the Constitution was first drafted and presented to the colonies, it was rejected. A majority of the colonies didn't want it. They figured we just got done fighting a war, breaking away from a centralizing power. Why do we want to start another one and risk all the things that come with being a part of that? But as I just said, through the Federalist Papers, Hamilton, John Jay, James Madison in particular, were making the point that we need this, at least for the time being, to help us, grow and become fortified as a new country. But as I said, I don't believe that it was meant to always be that way. I believe that the founders meant for the states to become self-sufficient and operate independently. Because the fact of the matter is, if the states could exist independently, that would actually do more to develop relationships with other states. Because if the states were independent and they had more say-so on issues like their borders, well, then that would allow the states to have more liberty into how they operate. For example, the subject of abortion is a really big deal among most people. And by it being a federal issue, it's like the whole country is divided over it. But if it were a state issue, well, then, people who favored it could live in a state that allows it, and those who don't could live in a state that doesn't. So that's just one example of how life would be a lot easier if states that were capable of functioning independently would simply be allowed to exist independently. And from what I see, New Hampshire's following suit with this. Looks like they have uh, a movement to try and become independent of the federal government also. And again, I would totally support New Hampshire's efforts in that regard. So um, these are some of the things that were coming to me yesterday in regard to all of this. Um, it's it's very, I'm not sure how to go forward with talking about this subject, but with our ability with crypto to create our own economy, this is going to, make this matter much more in the spotlight. Because the fact of the matter is people just want to live free. That's one of the reasons that I've been attracted to the Libertarian Party, because they just want to don't hurt people, don't take their stuff, is really what it comes down to. And um, these are factors that play into the manifestation of what I call the successful society. And again, that's primarily defined on how people relate to one another. And really, freedom is a state of being. And, unfortunately, a lot of people feel that in order to have such a state of being, they have to take it from someone else. And that really doesn't have to be, it doesn't really have to be that way. So, um, at this point, I would have taken the time to acknowledge the chat, but I don't see anybody subjecting or submitting anything into the chat. So if anybody's out there, regardless, I appreciate you being here, whether you're chatting or not. But one thing that I do wanted to, share with the stream this morning is the fact that we have the Pulse Chain Tour coming up. Hey, somebody did manage to drop in a chat. Hector the Protector, loving these streams. Well, thank you, Hector. I'm enjoying making them. I'm getting more and more comfortable, starting to be more fun. I did wake up with a headache this morning, and it's affecting my voice, but here I am anyway. But yeah, I want to take a moment to talk about the Pulse Chain Tour. Oops. Still getting used to the software here. Share screen. Let's see. It's not showing. It's not showing the Pulse Chain Tour tab. Hang on. I want to share the Pulse Chain Tour thing, and it's not coming up. Oh, here we go. All right. I'm such a noob. All right. So RG3, who hosts the Friday Night Hangout and who's the main guy behind Discourse Syndicate, and he's also the guy who helped organize the Highest of Stakes movie. Him and his crew, they are hosting a meetup in Las Vegas. It's going to be March 6th through 9. I plan on going. I haven't bought a ticket yet. I haven't made any hotel arrangements yet because my house building project is going to play a factor on my availability to go to this. But since Vegas is only a few hour drive away from me, it's really hard to just not get in and drive up there, at least for one day. But SJ that I mentioned earlier is part of RG's crew, one of the organizers with this, along with Black Hexagon, whom I've met on many occasions. I recommend that you take the time to go to this. This is going to be a wonderful event. One of the reasons I'm taking the time to promote it is the fact that there are some people that I know that are going that I would like to see, including a young man named Donovan, who was on Maddie's uh, conference last month. And I got to share a panel with Donovan, and I've followed him on Twitter, and he's a very well-informed guy. He's a TA guy. He's really good with the charts, and I'd like to meet him in person. I'm glad that he's on board with Pulse Chain. I think he's a very valuable asset to our community. So I'd like to meet him. And I caught Corey Geary's stream for a little bit yesterday, and it sounds like he's going to be there too. Corey and I have met up on a couple occasions. He's helped bring a couple of people to some meetups that I've hosted here in Arizona, and just appreciate Corey very much. So I'd like to go to see him. And there was a guy on the chat here in the stream yesterday. I don't remember his screen name. I know his real name, but I'm not going to give it in case he doesn't want people knowing it. But he said he was going to be there. And so I would like to see him again, too. When I went to Denver for the KSB, the Crypto Sparbook tour that those guys did back in 2021, this guy let me stay at his house, and I really appreciated that. So I'd like to go to Vegas to see him again. So, yeah. A couple more people showed up in the chat. So thanks for showing up, guys. Benny Blanco from the Bronx. Oh, wow, Benny, I didn't know you were from the Bronx. That's cool. I was in New York last year when I went back home to visit some people. If I knew you were in the area, I maybe would have taken the time to hang out with you. And when I go back east again, I'll keep that in mind, and maybe we can meet up. Most people don't know, but rap music originated in the Bronx. And it's kind of interesting. I visited with somebody one time who gave me a rundown on how rap music came to be. And it actually originated in Jamaica. And rap battles were a way of people, it was a form of entertainment. It was kind of like professional wrestling. And what happened is when the communists took over the government in Jamaica, a lot of people fled and they came to the United States. And a lot of them went to the Bronx because they went to New York to, apply for citizenship. And a lot of people just stayed in New York. And so they took rap, they took their music with them. And that's how rap music, became a thing in the United States. Really interesting story. So basically the best rappers are Jamaicans. It's based on my experience growing up, because, rap music just went mainstream when I was a teenager, and it was just the thing. That along with breakdancing, which is not something I'm going to be doing on stream. If I try to breakdance, I'll just break my body. But yeah, so that was one thing I wanted to do as a promotional part of the stream. Another thing I want to do for promotion is I usually don't like wearing hats because they just make my head uncomfortable, and they tend to make my head sweat too. But I did wanted to take the time to wear a hat during this stream because it is representing the Fitzgerald Company. And the Fitzgerald Company is the name of the building contractor that is building my house. And now, granted, his name is not Fitzgerald, and so I had to ask him about that, but that's actually the name of his grandfather, who was a designer and home builder here in Arizona, back early 20th century, maybe even the late 19th century, as far as that may be. He showed me, he's got some framed pictures in his office of his grandfather's work, and the pictures look really old, but and the architecture itself looked like it was early 20th century, maybe even late 19th, but it's really, really cool. So Travis is doing an awesome job working with me in regards to my house. Uh, I told him yesterday that I was going to be wearing a hat this morning, and he was just all tickled about it. And he's like, "Hey, maybe I'll get you a shirt too." So we'll see about that. But I remember talking with Travis a couple weeks ago when I uh, was wanting to do this. I was getting things arranged to start streaming. And he made a point that he thought that I would be a better asset to humanity if I spent more of my time streaming than digging in the dirt. Basically, he was making the point that you should let home builders build your house and you go do something else. But the fact of the matter is, when I'm out there on the land, you know, moving dirt around and stuff, it really gets my brain going and it gives me something to think about to present on stream, because it really is kind of challenging to speak for an extended period of time if you don't know what you want to talk about. And the fact that it's going to be raining all week is going to make that a little challenging. But I'm willing to step to the challenge for the sake of the community. So, with that, I want to shift to another segment of the stream where I want to talk about things that are specifically crypto related. As I said in the first stream, uh, there's only three cryptos that I'm going to talk about at length for the time being, and that is Hex, Com, which is short for communists, and Inc., which is short for the incentive token. Now, two of these assets are Richard Hart assets. Com is not. Com was developed by a day one Hexakin who goes by the name of Kodiak, and he has developed other. Um, he's done. I believe he made the another front end for the Hex contract. I think it was called Another Hex or Backup Hex, something like that. I never used that front end, so I don't remember the name exactly. But anyway, Com is one of my favorite coins. And until the goal is reached with each one of those coins, I'm not going to talk about anything else in detail. Now, yesterday I started to talk about the process of acquiring a wallet, and I was going to continue with that today, but because of OPSEC issues, I want to be a little more um, I want to be a little more cautious in how I proceed with that, because after thinking about it, as I was advised yesterday, the fact that I am doing live streams, I do need to be a little more careful with how I move forward with that. So I'm not doing, I'm not going to continue with that this morning. Um, One thing I do want to share, though, that I haven't brought up yet is this website. Uh, Let me bring it up here. Um, I want to share this site. This is called GoPulse.com. This site is basically central to the Pulse Chain blockchain. Now, this is independently made. This wasn't made by Richard or any of his devs, as far as I know. And this site is basically this is kind of like the Wall Street Journal of the Pulse Chain ecosystem. This site will tell you a multitude of things regarding the Pulse Chain system and its respective assets. Now, this is the homepage. And if you notice on the homepage, it has the four main assets that are Richard's ideas. That's the Pulse token, the Pulse X token, the incentive token, and Hex as it resides on Pulse Chain. Now, let's see. The Pulse token is what you would need in order to perform transactions on the Pulse Chain network. That's a pretty important thing to know and something I have not yet mentioned. And you can buy Pulse directly from Coast, which I did talk about yesterday, app.zeroxcoast.com. You can go on there and you can buy Pulse directly and send it into your wallet. And then that Pulse will allow you to pay for transactions as you make, as you do transactions on the network. That's a big step up because previously, before Coast introduced that option, you had to buy wrapped Pulse on Ethereum and bridge it over into Pulse Chain. Now you don't have to do that anymore. And that's a big convenience on our end. And so if you are new and you're going to get a wallet and you want to be involved in, the network, you do have to acquire some Pulse. That's kind of a given. So that's not, there's other things that you can do with Pulse. And as a matter of fact, I had mentioned yesterday that, we have a vertically integrated, decentralized ecosystem. And one of the elements that makes up part of that ecosystem that I didn't mention yesterday is the fact that we have a lending platform called Liquid Loans that you can send Pulse into, and you can borrow a dollar stablecoin against your Pulse. There's a lot of details that are involved in Liquid Loans, and there's lots of videos that have been made by the people who are responsible for creating it. I would recommend that you listen to their videos rather than have me explain it, although I may explain it sometime later in the future. But with something of that nature, it's better that you get your information from the people who are involved in making it rather than getting it through a third party like me. Even though I do use Liquid Loans and I like it, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about it at this time, and I don't plan on doing that anytime in the near future because of the responsibilities that are involved in using that type of platform. But anyway, this is Go Pulse, and there's lots of information that this site will tell you. It tells you the prices of the assets. It tells you, let's see, I want to look at it a little closer. Yeah, it tells you the price of the respective assets. And if you click on these white squares, these are price charts. So if you're familiar with how to read a price chart, you can click on these and it will open a price chart. I opened a price chart yesterday and went into that a little bit. I don't want to get distracted into that right now. But another thing that it tells you is the liquidity that is available. Like, for example, over here with Hex, it says that there's 1.6 billion hex in liquidity. What liquidity is, if you're not familiar, is how much of an asset is available in relationship to another asset. The most common trading pair being hex to a dollar stable coin like USDC, for example. And as the asset is bought or sold, that affects the price on an exponential level. Because if you're buying hex, you're not only taking hex out of that trading pair, but you're adding to the dollar side of the trading pair. So the price difference is affected exponentially because your involvement is affecting both sides of the pairs. This is something that Richard Hart explained in one of his earlier live streams. He explains liquidity pairing. And again, he's someone who can explain things in much greater detail than I can. But again, and if you look at these percentages right here, these green percentages, this represents how much the price has changed within the past 24 hours. Because in the upper right-hand corner, you can change up the time frame. Like this is a 5-minute evaluation, 1 hour, 24 hours, which is the default, and which is what I leave it set to, because I don't pay attention to the prices that much until I need to, either buy or sell something. Then I'll pay attention to the price, because the prices are constantly changing because the blockchain updates every 10 seconds. And that's another variable that can be examined through this GoPulse website. You can open up, if there's a series of drop-down menus up here, and one of them is called stats. And if you click on this one called blocks, this is reading the blockchain. And what it does is it updates every 10 seconds. And you can see that with every block, there's a certain number of pulse tokens that are burned every 10 seconds in order to cover the expenses of processing the transactions among the validators. And you can click on either one of these blocks and it will open up a block explorer and it will show you the specific transactions that occurred in each block. And then you can literally click on each one of those transactions and you can see details of what assets constitute that transaction. So this really testifies to the transparency of this system. And I want to go back and I want to leave that page because for some reason, for a while, if I leave that window open too long, it was crashing my browser. So I don't want to leave that open. But anyway, as I was saying, the transparency of blockchain is really its strength, because it makes it difficult for people to be involved in underhanded operations that are just weren't even worth going into in our conventional legacy financial system. I mean, who knows what's going on behind closed doors at the Federal Reserve? We don't have that problem in Pulse Chain because every single block can be examined and every single transaction within that block can be examined. And there are people who have done this kind of blockchain analysis that are just very impressive with what I've seen in the past when when Hex first started there was a guy named Silver the Antidote who was really good at doing blockchain analysis, and he would do like entire streams for like an hour or more, just pulling up addresses, tracing assets from one address to another. He was basically doing a psychological analysis of different wallets and, pointing out people, yeah, this guy's a traitor because of that. He's likely to dump, this person's, just you can tell this person's a staker, things of that nature. To me, that's just it's almost like a whole field of psychology in itself. Too bad Silver ain't around to do his thing anymore. I haven't seen him in a really long time. But anyway, again, there's other statistics that you can see on his homepage. One that's worth pointing out, probably my favorite statistic on this page, is right here. This is the amount of PulseX that has been burned since PulseChain started. Looks like it's 3.38%. My light that I'm using for this stream is affecting my eyes, and I can't see some of this small print very well. But anyway, PulseX is a token that is associated with the exchange. And how the exchange works as it is being used, there is a public function called the buy and burn that anybody can run. And what happens is every day, the exchange actually purchases some of the PulseX token off of the market, and it burns it. It literally destroys it, part of the supply. And the PulseX token does not inflate. It's got a fixed, when PulseChain launched, there was a fixed supply of the PulseX token. And because it is bought and burned, a portion of it every day, that means it is truly deflationary. And because of the exchange, there's always a buyer of last resort. So the supply is always going down, which means if you hold some, your percentage of the supply always goes up. Now, these numbers are so minute at this time that you would hardly notice. But as it says on the page, over 3% of the supply has been bought and burnt, right, as of this time, as of today. So basically, holding PulseX is like holding stock in the New York Stock Exchange. No matter what's going on in the activities, you're benefiting as a holder of PulseX regardless. That's a token that I will probably talk about in more detail as my 3 favorite tokens reach their goal. I want to take a brief moment to break away from this to acknowledge somebody in the chat, and that is Red Squirrel. Oi, oi! I remember Red Squirrel before PulseChain launched, if this is the same guy. Red Squirrel made these flowcharts for how to utilize the different assets on PulseChain to create passive income and yield. And it was like a diagram for a perpetual motion machine. I think I still have some of those graphics on my other desktop computer that I was using at that time. But I love those graphics, and I've actually developed some of my own since then. But big shout out to Red Squirrel, man. Thank you for stopping in. But yeah, this GoPulse.com is by far one of my favorite sites, like on the internet in general. Like, I access this thing more than any other site that I'm aware of. And one of the reasons for that is it has a site called Portfolio. And I'm not going to open that site right now because uh, this Google account, this Chrome account is associated with one of my main wallets, and I don't want to dox that particular wallet. So what I'll probably do in the future is set up a an on-screen wallet that I can use for demonstration purposes. But the portfolio feature of GoPulse is really awesome. And one of the things that I like about it so much is if you click on that tab and you link your wallet or wallets with that portfolio service, and you scroll down to the bottom of the page, it says yield. And it will show you how much yield you're earning from your yield bearing assets that GoPulse recognizes. And that's Hex on both chains, Hedron on both chains, and incentive token that I'm aware of. In my portfolio, that's what comes up. And you can choose to have it display those values in 1 hour, 24 hours, weekly, monthly, yearly. And I keep it set on a 24-hour setting, which is the default, because when I look at that, that tells me how much I'm getting paid to sleep every 24 hours, or at least how much yield I'm earning every 24 hours. And, as the thumbnail of this live stream shows, buy Hex, stake it till you make it. That was the whole goal for me from getting in Hex from the beginning, is to buy Hex, send it into the contract, stake it. By staking it, you get T-shares. By holding T-shares, you are qualified to receive yield based on the mathematics of the contract, not arbitrarily. And so then as my stakes add up, the dollar value of the yield adds up. So then once the dollar value of your yield was the equivalent of what I was getting paid to work, then in my mind, I staked it until I made it. Because once I reached that point, then I could take inventory on my financial strategy, because I was essentially set in that regard. So the GoPulse website and their portfolio feature is a user-friendly way of just getting a straightforward presentation of all of your yield that you're earning every day. It's just an awesome feature of this website. When Hex first started, you had to do the math to figure out the dollar value of your yield. There wasn't the user interface didn't present that information at first. So this is, we've come a long way in the past 4 years. And so another feature that is on this site, I'm not going to connect my wallet, but I pulled up the drop-down menu under apps. And if you click on Hex, it is a user interface that allows you to stake your Hex. And that's just one of many user interfaces that a person has available to interact with the hex staking contract. And again, this testifies to the decentralized nature of this ecosystem. In the movie, The Highest of Stakes, one of the main characters is a friend of RG3's. His name's Mikey, and his wife, I think her name's Raimi. And she makes it in that movie, you know, she makes this concern that, oh, you're giving your money to a website. Well, what if the website crashes? Our money disappears. That's not how DeFi works. That is not how Pulse Chain works. When you interact with the contract, the website is only a user interface. You're not giving your money to a website. The money is actually, depending on what you're referring to as money, if you're using dollars, you're sending your dollars to an exchange and you're exchanging your dollars for a dollar's value worth of a digital asset, which you then do whatever with. But the website is just a user interface. The website is, anybody can design a website. Anybody can design a user interface. And the fact that we have multiple interfaces available testifies to the decentralized nature of our ecosystem. So these are just that much more options that we have. And to give you an example of some of the assets that we have available there, if you go under coins and you click on bubbles, like I just did, this screen shows you the current price appreciation in percentage wise of just multiple assets that are available on the exchange. I personally don't recommend that you get involved with any of these. I kind of feel silly that I opened up that screen in the first place because, as I said, my focus is only on 3 coins: Hex, Ink, and Com. And you can see Hex and Ink right here on the homepage. Now, the incentive token, I talked about that briefly in the first live stream. But the incentive token, like Hex and Com, if you meet the conditions, you can acquire it for free. In the case of Ink, you have to send assets into the PulseX exchange to serve as liquidity on a page within the site itself called the farms. By doing that, you can acquire LP tokens that you stake to get the incentive token for free. Eventually, I'm going to do a walkthrough explaining, showing the viewer how to do that specifically. But I'm not going to do that right now because it's just too involved. And there's other things that I want to do walkthroughs on first. But before I get into anything further, I want to take the time to present the Hexagon of the Day Award, the prestigious and highly coveted Hexagon of the people that have gotten this award so far are people who are not really super popular in the Hex community. There are people that kind of are in the shadows, as it were, but are still very foundational to the Hex community. And so I had said yesterday about taking a trip up the coast of California. This is something I'd wanted to do since I was a teenager. And, um, there were different times in my life where I could have taken off and, rented a car and done that and, fly out to California and rent a car and whatever as part of a vacation. But the vision that came to me about this trip when I was younger was the quality of life that the trip represented. And until I had that quality of life, it wouldn't have been as meaningful. Well, Hex has been a contributor in helping me have that quality of life. So that's why I took the trip when I did. But another reason was the fact that I had been in contact with somebody in regard to having my car wrapped. And, um, I could have had it done locally. A lot of people asked me after I had it done, why'd you go so far out of your way to do that when you could have taken it to somebody here? And it's like, it's the relationship that counts. I wanted to help out a friend and I was willing to go out of my way to provide him with the business. So when I got to the redwood forest, um, instead of continuing all the way up into like Washington or Oregon, I cut across and went over to Idaho to uh, get my car wrapped because that's where the artist lived. And the artist's brother, whom I have known in Hex for many years, uh, allowed me to stay with him and his wife in their house while my car was being done. And at first, I was told it would only be probably about 3 days, but one thing led to another, and he ended up needing to take an entire week. So I didn't have any complaints, and I was enjoying the time there. And the fact is, his brother and his family were just as willing to let me stay there, as long as it took to get the job done. So that meant a whole lot to me. And this Hexagon of the day is someone that I first met at a meetup in Orlando, Florida. And no, wrong. That was the second meetup. The first meetup we met at was in Idaho when I talked about the Hexagon of the day on the first day, which was Seth Mendoza. I met this man there. We kind of just ran into each other in the lobby of the place where we were meeting. And we just introduced ourselves to one another because we both thought that the other person was Seth. And then right after that, Seth walks out and we just looked at each other in shock because we're two older guys and Seth is this young kid. But anyway, we hit it off at that point and we've pretty much been friends since then. And like I said, we met again at another meetup in Orlando. And I think we may have ran into each other in Vegas at least once also. But anyway, he let me stay at his house, him and his wife. And while we were there, since we had some time to kill, they took me to a place in Idaho called Silver City. And my backdrop is a picture from the entrance of Silver City. You can't see the sign, but there's like a little sign that says, Silver City, so many miles that way. And it's a little wooden cross sign. And this town is just like out in the middle of the mountains. And it's like this town, it's like a silver mining town, kind of like Tombstone. And like all the buildings are still there from the 19th century. Tombstone burned down twice. So I think the only original building left is the Birdcage Theater. But anyway, this Silver City here out in Idaho was just this awesome, beautiful little 19th century mining town that went to, and there's actually people there that are renovating the buildings there, back to their original 19th century design. But with that, I want to present, oops, uh, the Hexagon of the Day Award. I want to present to my friend Exploring Idaho. And like I said, this is the man who I met up with, and his brother, Josh, is the person who did the wrap on my car. And he's done some other printing for me since then. And I've referred other people to him. And if anybody has any printing interests, I highly recommend you look up JMM Imaginations on Twitter, or you can ask me directly for his contact info. But Josh does awesome work, and his brother, Exploring Idaho, has just been a great friend. And I am honored to present him with the Hexagon of the Day Award. If you don't know this man, I highly recommend that you follow him and get to know him. I consider him a pillar of the Hex community. These are the people that I want to give the Hexagon of the Day Award, the people that I've seen demonstrate character that I consider, pillars of the successful society, the Society of Hexaco. So, unfortunately, he's not here on the stream to receive the award. I guess it's just not that prestigious yet. Like I said, this is only my third day live streaming. I'm not out there begging people to follow me. I'm not begging people to subscribe. I love not subscribing to people who beg people to subscribe to them. But anyway, that's that. I do want to take the time here also to recognize Metallic Elmo. Hey, dude, listening in from the car. Good to see you streaming. Thank you, Mr. Elmo. It's good to be streaming. It feels good. It's fun. I just started. This is just my third day, but I'm doing it. And yeah, I met Metallic Elmo in Vegas, and I was glad that he came from overseas to be part of that conference. And yeah, so I hope you got in a little earlier, because I am going to bring this to an end. For now, I'm only streaming for an hour, just because I have things I need to do. But at the same time, my stream length is going to be predicated on user participation. So, in the future, if the chat is really active with questions and comments and, just general interaction, then I'd be willing to stream as long as it takes to satisfy everybody's curiosity. My goal is to have a 24-hour stream where I have to bring other people on to carry it on. But like I said, I want that interest to be organic. I don't want to beg people to participate. So with that, I am going to bring this particular stream to an end. I've gotten some text messages. I have some business that I have to address. So thank you, everybody, for your time, for coming on. And I am going to start putting together material for tomorrow. And until then, I hope you all have a great day. let's do our part to make Hexaco the greatest thing on the planet. And until then, I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye.